Good afternoon, Senators Cotton, Senators Fischer. There's an argument that we often hear that senators and members of Congress support Israel because of Jewish political clout in America. You both come from states which are not blessed with huge Jewish populations, Arkansas and Nebraska. From where is your support? Where does it come from?
I believe that we see broad support across the country for Israel, and I think it's because of our shared values. We have democracy, we have an independent judiciary, we have respect and women's rights. So that's where I see this support coming from, is just the acknowledgement of those shared values.
Yeah, same as Deb. You're right that, there's not a large Jewish diaspora in Arkansas. We have probably tens and tens of Jews there. But Arkansans of all confessions or none at all recognize that we have those shared values and that we had shared security interests as well, and that Israel is the strongest partner for peace and stability and security that we have in the Middle East.
How important do you think it is for your constituents that you take a strong position on Israel? I mean, does it matter? I mean, to the voter in Omaha, does it matter what you think about Israel?
Oh, I know it matters. When I travel the state of Nebraska, which is just about every single weekend I'm home and I'm traveling the state, and we talk about the issues and the challenges that we're facing now here in the world. When we look at who our friends are, when we look at who our adversaries are, Israel's always number one when it comes to our friends. And that's acknowledged by the people of Nebraska. They know the importance of Israel, first of all, as a democracy in the region, but also for the military presence, the stability that they offer in the Mideast.
Senator Cotton, when I was a kid growing up in Denver, the Democratic Party was thought of as the pro-Israel party. Now the polling is showing that the Republicans are the Republican rank and file are much more supportive of Israel than the Democratic rank and file. Why is that, do you think? What's changed among the Republicans?
Well, that's certainly a regrettable fact according to public opinion polls. Since Oslo, you've seen consistent increases for support of Israel among Republicans and independents, and unfortunately you've seen relatively flat support among Democrats. That's partly because the Democratic Party is the party of the left in our country, and a lot of the anti-Israel activity in America, like around the world, comes from the left. If you look, for instance, at the BDS movement. Now, Deb and I serve with a lot of Democrats who are very pro-Israel, but I think our base of voters probably are more pro-Israel today than the Democratic base of voters, especially whenever you were growing up in Denver.
Senator Fischer, some critics of Prime Minister Netanyahu blame his rocky relationship with President Obama as turning Israel into a partisan issue, that it's now become a partisan issue. They point to the divisive speech in Congress in 2015. What do you think of that criticism? Has Israel become a partisan issue? And if so, what can it do to keep that from moving on forward?
I hope Israel hasn't become a partisan issue. That doesn't help anyone. And I certainly don't blame the Prime Minister for any actions or any speech that he's given. I happen to think he did a fabulous job on his speech before Congress. We need to remember that the Prime Minister's nation faces an existential threat with Iran. And he has a responsibility as the leader of that nation to recognize that threat and to articulate it and to defend his nation with any means possible. And I think his speech was one of the tools that he used to do that.
Senator Cotton, Israel gets a lot from the U.S.-Israel relationship. Just last year, we signed a $38 billion memorandum of understanding. It's clear what we get from the U.S. as far as military is concerned. What do you get from us?
Well, we support Israel not only because Israel needs the support as a smaller country that's surrounded by many of its adversaries in a way that the United States is not a very big country that's far away from our adversaries. However, we get a lot of that money reinvested back in our defense industry. I think more than half of all the dollars that we contribute to Israel through military aid is invested one way or another back in the United States defense industry. We benefit from the technology that's developed as well. If you look at things like Iron Dome and David slings and some of the fundamental technology that goes into those weapon systems, those can be used in the future to protect our troops from close-in, short, and medium-range missiles and rockets that we need in places like South Korea or Afghanistan or Iraq, and that we may need in numerous other possible hotspots around the world. So that money is not just an expression of charity or something that we give away because we know Israel needs it for its security. It's something that benefits our security and our economy as well.
You sit on the Senate Intelligence Committee. One thing the Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying consistently is that the world has taken a kind of more a supportive stance of Israel because they need Israeli intelligence. How true is that? I mean, how important is the Israeli intelligence of the Mideast for Washington and for your allies in Europe?
Well, I can't go into all the details, obviously, but I will say that the cooperation between the United States and Israel's security services is among the very best we have with any nation in the world. Both the technical skills of Israelis as well as the worldwide relationships because of the Jewish diaspora gives Israel some advantages that virtually no other country or institution anywhere else in the world has as well. So we operate hand in glove with Israel's military and security services. I was just there a few weeks ago on a trip with the Intelligence Committee, and it's as good as ever, maybe even better now that President Trump is in office, and it is a close, almost symbiotic relationship between those organs of our two states.
You just mentioned something that I haven't heard before, and that's the Jewish diaspora having a role in this intelligence. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Well, it's a lot easier to find Jews in every country around the world than it is to find Americans in some countries. And the relationships that the citizens of the nation of Israel have with that diaspora, many of whom have come, for example, from the old Soviet republics once they declared their independence in the early 1990s, gives Israel some unique advantages that most countries don't have when they're trying to identify threats from overseas or develop the information that their elected leaders need to keep their country safe. Oftentimes that has a secondary benefit for Israel's allies as well.
Interesting. Senator Fischer, I imagine that you hear from time to time from your constituents that America is paying too high a price in its relationship with other countries by being so close to Israel. How do you respond to that? I mean, when they say we're losing the Arab world because we're so close to Israel?
I think we can go back to a question you asked Senator Cotton about what do we get out of this relationship. And it's easy to point out what the United States gets out of the relationship. Alexander Haig talked about Israel as an unsinkable aircraft carrier, basically. The United States is able to use ports in Israel. We share intelligence, as Senator Cotton was just discussing, and Israel's known for their strong capabilities when it comes to gathering intelligence. We look at our joint operations that we do together, our joint missions. We can look at missile defense. So there's any number of areas that we benefit from a relationship from, besides the fact that Israel is a democracy. Senator Cotton and I both serve on the Armed Services Committee, and I chair the subcommittee on strategic forces. So when especially we look at the missile defense program, and when we look at Iron Dome and David Sling and Arrow 3, how important those are for our country to be able to work in cooperation with Israel on, but how important they are to Israel as well, and how that technology that we're gaining in many of those areas is going to be used in other theaters as well.
Senator Cotton, you sent a much-discussed letter in 2015 at the height of the Iran nuclear debate to Khamenei, the Iranian leader, warning that a new president could very easily dismantle the deal, so you better be careful signing it. Would you want to see the deal dismantled? And do you want to get out of the deal, or do you just want to see it enforced better right now?
Well, to be exact, Deb and I sent it with 45 other Republican senators. So I think the administration is undergoing a more fundamental review of their Iran policy across the entire waterfront right now. So it's understandable they're not rushing into a decision about the nuclear deal itself. The consequences of that deal are grave. That's the gravest consequences of that bad deal is that Iran might become a nuclear power, but it's probably not going to happen tomorrow or the next week or the next month. So they have the time to undertake that thorough review, and that's one of the things the Obama administration did not do. They viewed the nuclear deal in isolation of all of Iran's other malign activity, its campaign of imperial aggression across the Middle East, its support for terrorism, and so forth. So I think it's proper and prudent that the administration is taking that thorough review, and then they'll make a decision about the JCPOA along with all of our other relationships with Iran. But I think President Trump put it well. Iran is on notice. And that deal, at a minimum, that deal is not going to stop us from confronting Iran and putting pressure on them every time they are counteracting U.S. interests, no matter where it is in the world. And that's what the Obama administration failed to do.
And we need to make sure that the deal's upheld. You know, if there aren't going to be any changes in the future with the administration as they look at it, we at least need to make sure that it's followed. We're in a dangerous position. As you said, it's not tomorrow, it's not next year, but we're in a dangerous position for the future. So we need to make sure that inspections are done, and they're done according to what was signed.
Let me just ask you one last question before we have to go. President Trump is coming on May 22nd to Israel. What's the significance of this visit, this being his first visit abroad, and one of the stops he's coming to is Israel? And why is that important, or how is that important? What message does that send?
Well, I think it's a very good sign, for instance, that President Trump is going to make on his first trip, stop in Israel. This is the first time since Jimmy Carter took office in 1977 that a president's first stop was not either Canada or Mexico. So it goes to show that, after 8 years of trying to withdraw from the Middle East, reduce our investments and our commitments there under Barack Obama, that's no longer the case under Donald Trump. I think it's actually pretty telling that he's going to be going to both Jerusalem and Riyadh, the capitals of the two countries that are the home of the Jewish religion and Islam, and also reflects the potential for more cooperation between those two countries. That's one of the unhappy side effects of the long tenure of Barack Obama, is that Israel has better relations now with some of its Arab neighbors than it has had in decades, and I hope that can continue under President Trump as well.
I believe it shows the administration and President Trump understand the special relationship that the United States has with Israel. I think it also shows a religious significance, going to Riyadh, going to Jerusalem, and going to Rome. I think that's a smart move on the part of the president, because he's showing not just that the American people and the American leadership is ready to step forward again and fill a vacuum that I think we've seen the last 8 years, but there is a moral authority behind it.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.